Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. We are wrapping up Misery. We're talking about parts 3 and 4. So part 3 is Paul, and we've jumped forward a little ways. It's summertime, and Paul is still writing. He is working on the book, and earlier, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the typewriter that Annie bought for him was missing the N key. And all of a sudden, in the middle of his work, Paul notices that the letter T drops and clanks to the floor. And the typewriter then proceeds to throw the letter E. So he's just having so many things that he has to fill in, because when he types out his pages, he has to go in and manually put in the letters that are missing. Paul is remembering that at one point Annie wanted to know how the story is going to end, and he wouldn't tell her. He said, I can't do that, which makes sense because he doesn't want to risk her killing him as soon as she knows. And she got pissed at him and cut his thumb off. Quote, punishment might be deferred but never escaped, page 233. So, Annie has a very long memory. She is willing to make people think that things are fine, and then she goes in and exacts her revenge. So a state police officer pulls up. Now we're back in the present time, summertime. Annie is mowing the lawn with her riding lawnmower. A state officer pulls up, and he looks in Paul's window when Paul throws an ashtray at the window. And the officer is shocked, and he looks, and he has a picture of Paul because he's a missing person, and the state police officer is actually trying to, find Paul. So he is shocked, and he's like, it's you. And Annie happens to be behind the officer, and she kills him. She has a wooden stake that she had used as a cross for when her cow died. She had to bury it. She put a cross in the ground. She pulls it up. There's a big pointy end, and she stabs the officer just over and over. Everywhere. It's bloody. She pretty much overdoes it. And he's still not dead, but when she turns to go away, she thinks he's dead, and he starts crawling toward his cruiser, and she comes back with the mower. She mows his arms, and then she mows over his head. It's really gruesome. So Annie has this big mess to clean up. She has a police car to get rid of. She has the body to get rid of. She has blood fucking everywhere in the yard and the driveway. And of course this is all Paul's fault. So she moves Paul down into the cellar, and she says, you have to stay here in case anyone comes to the house and checks for you, or for the officer. And she's gonna go get rid of the police car and, handle things. So it's, Annie carries him into the basement. They're being so real with each other now. The gloves are off, and Annie says that she almost cut his penis off instead of his foot. Paul's like, I might kill Misery again. I haven't decided yet. All this animosity is bubbling to the surface. She tells Paul he's gonna have to start writing faster, and she says, when I'm gone, you're gonna have to sit here in the dark because I can't afford anyone seeing a light on in the house. And Paul's trapped in the dark with the rats, and he has food. She gave him food, but he's all alone, and it's a creepy, damp, dark basement. He's getting an infection. He just feels crappy. He's been maimed so much, and he's had so many incidents. He keeps healing, but probably incorrectly. She's a nurse, but she is not in an exactly sterile environment, and she's done all these procedures on him by herself. I don't know. So while he's in the dark, he sees a can of lighter fluid, and he steals it. So he now has this can of lighter fluid, and when she moves him back up to the bedroom, he hides it. The two cops come checking on their missing officer, and Annie has warned Paul that if he says anything, she will kill them, no questions asked. And this will also be on Paul's head, but Paul doesn't really feel guilty in that sense. he realizes that he wants to kill Annie. Quote, "The fact was simple. He wanted to take care of Annie Wilkes himself. They could only put you in jail, bitch," he thought. "I know how to hurt you," page 271. So Paul has almost finished. Annie has become just overly nice. He won't let her read the pages anymore. She buys caviar and she buys champagne to celebrate. Paul asks if he can smoke a cigarette, a celebratory cigarette, and she hems and haws and she says, "Fine, but I don't want the smell of it around me, so how about you do it?" They agree that he'll smoke the cigarette and then she'll come in and celebrate with the champagne and all this stuff. So she gives him a match and Paul arranges his table across his wheelchair. He arranges the manuscript, which turns out to be a fake manuscript, but the cover letter says that it's Misery's Return. He has that facing out toward the door, and he covers everything with lighter fluid. And he's got his match, and he's ready. So when Annie comes into the room, he lights it and burns what she thinks is the actual manuscript. And at that point, we think that it is also being burned. And she comes over and she tries to put the fire out. He takes the heavy-ass typewriter and slams it into her, knocking her over. He jumps down and is pressing her into the flame that's just starting to spread, and she's burning. She's got the typewriter injury. And he starts grabbing pages of charred paper and shoving it down her throat. How fitting is that? So it takes forever for her to kind of die. She comes after him, he's crawling out at the door, she manages to grab him and pull on him, and he escapes, and he finally leaves the room and shuts the door, and her fingers are coming underneath the door. This woman just will not die. And so he hides, and he's just seeing her everywhere, not convinced that she's dead. The two cops show up again, the ones who were looking for their missing officer earlier, and they save Paul. He tells them that she's in the bedroom, they're looking at him, he looks terrible. And they go into the bedroom and she's not there. So we think that maybe Annie has escaped. But actually what happened is she went out the window of Paul's room and crawled to the barn and died there. So she is dead. But unfortunately, Paul's mind just will not accept that Annie is dead. Now he's back, in the land of the living, and he sees her everywhere, and he's just so traumatized that it's made him paranoid, and he can't relax. He keeps seeing Annie around every turn. So Paul starts writing a book about a boy who finds a skunk, and that's where we end things. He's actually able to write again. I forgot to say that Misery's Return actually was something he retrieved from the house and published, and it just has sold like crazy, mostly because of the story behind how it was written. And I also added up the manuscript. So there are about 39 pages in this book that are Misery's Return, including the false start that he made. And the actual page count for Misery is 310 pages. That's like 12% of the book, which I think is far too much. This has the same feel to it a little bit as Gerald's Game. I prefer Gerald's Game. Have a spooky day.